Okay, we're back at it. November 6th, Friday of an election week. Um, so a lot of uncertainty going on right now. But we're going to go bar by bar. It's your boy Kamal Hart. And let's just go ahead and jump right in it. Let's go ahead and get the chart started around, let's just go 604. If you're walking up to the market, this was a week that I wasn't really too stressed about trading. I took a lot of time. I'm gonna let that fight go by. I took a lot of time on the sim mode. I did take some live trades, but I wasn't in a rush. And that's probably key on a day like today, on a week like it's been, until we really figure out what's going on. But on this chart, we're going to be looking at a range. Um, See how prices are below and above, below, above, below, above. Those are going to be the characteristics of a sideways market. It could break out in either direction at any time, but for now, this is what we're going to be dealing with. There's actually a lower high trade up here that would have triggered and you would have worked and that would have got you in, but that will kind of set the tone. Sometimes I even wait to take a trade until the open. I spend 15 minutes just watching prices and getting the feel for the day. So as we bounce higher here, um, let's wait for a breakout pullback above this area, and we can create some sort of micro trend. That's the breakout pullback. And how I would draw this one is right through here. And I'll be looking for trades off this line and potentially a trade after the first break going long. Here's the break. On that break, we go lower than the higher low swing, and we're closing below the EMA. So I'm going to be not as into the long trade, but I'm still bullish until we start crossing 34.95. Um, so close below. We have a second entry long here, but the signal bar, this ends up being an engulfing bar, but it closes back a little bit, so the it's not as strong of a signal. I wouldn't take that trade. This actually gets just enough for a scalp, but you know, not quite the entry we want. You can see that we're going a little sideways right here. And then here we get the breakout pullback to the low side. So now maybe we're going to go short. A lot of what's going on today is going to be kind of a waiting game um, until we get the setup. Um, Up off of here, this was kind of our lower high entry. There was a hidden second entry short. Um, it's not a great setup, but if you took it, it's working. Let's see if we get anything better. Here's a first entry, and here's a second entry. At this point, with your trends, right? Because on this trend, you could maybe see this is a breakout side and a move to a new low. But as long as I get 3 touches, I can also move this over and kind of read it like this, and they'll have basically the same effect. So 1 touch, 2 touch, 3 touch, 4 touch, 5 touch. It doesn't really break another touch down there. So this is just as effective as the first one that I drew. Um, um, earlier. So as we look at this trade, it's not a perfect setup, but if you're being aggressive, you might consider taking that as well. It goes, not gonna lie, that was kind of a hard trade to take, but it goes. Also looking for trends. There's a potential of a trend through here. We get some touches there, some bounces, so we'll work with this. There's a subtle second entry, but that signal bar isn't a bearish signal bar. Um, there's room to the lows, but that's not the trade. Here's like a failed break higher type trade. Um, but at this point, that's a first entry to this low right here. You could maybe count this as one low, but typically, if I have to work this hard to see the trade, it's not even worth taking. So I'll just skip that. It's going sideways. Look at those bars right through there. I'll just skip it. Here you get another kind of like failed break higher with another sort of entry. It's kind of a repeat pattern of this. Honestly, at this point, I don't even, it's just congestion, right? So we're just going to wait until we find some sort of trade with an edge. Interesting to note that on every channel, we get the breakout side move to a new low. And on this channel, we're kind of still working towards that new low. Here we create the new low, and then we pull back to the breakout zone. And that, here's a complicated trade as well, but it's there. And these are the trades with the most edge. If you want to talk about how to find that holy grail 90% win rate, it's seeing the market like this, I think is, what I'm looking to do um, when I'm looking for that, right? Because look at this trade. Even though the signal is an inside bar and this really becomes the signal, I wouldn't really take this, but I'm talking about the context, right? We had the range, we get a breakout with no breakout pullback, so we're expecting it to come test here. We have an overall trend. We get the breakout side, two legs to a new low. So we are on guard for reversals. So you have two larger ideas that are collaborating, even though there's no real major pivot point or no, you know, level. If you're reading the market like that, you'll start to see these pockets. And these are the pockets that end up being very profitable. So here's the higher low, but again, the signal bar is kind of bearish. You know, a part of you was thinking maybe you should just start being aggressive, but that's probably not a good idea on a day like today. We're still really just in between the highs and the lows. So it's just choppy and in the middle of nowhere. So it's actually not a good time to start being aggressive. If you were aggressive, it paid off. But, you know, if you're dealing with too much, this is a great day to just kind of shut it down at this point. But it's just patience. If we can wait for the trades, eventually we'll see a setup that makes sense, and that's where we'll get in. So here's a second entry short, but then you're going short into the EMA, you're going short into that support. We're already kind of making higher lows. So you need to be careful going short. The bar is an inside bar. That's not the short you want to take. If you take it, it should give you enough for a scalp. 84.50. It does give you enough for a scalp, but Depends on how you're trading it. If you're going 1 to 1, maybe not. But if you're going for a point or 2 points, then you might. But so you really need to be careful about how you're managing your stop losses and things like that. At this point, I'm just looking at this like we broke kind of lower, but you know, it's all just like a range through here. All just like a range through here. Here's a kind of interesting trade. It's a little hard to take this one, but if you look, we have a high here. We move down. We make a first entry, closes a doji. This bar, I was watching this bar. It goes lower and then engulfs. That's a second entry long to these highs, and really, you want to be exiting by here, and you have room to the overall highs. So you would consider this trade as well. I personally don't like the engulfing bars, so I skip these. But if I was going to take this, what I would try to do is let it close and then put my limit order back here at 34.8375 or 34.84 or something. So price will back up, get me in at a better price, and then we can see if we get the continuation. On this trade, you don't get that backup though, so it would have left you. So once again, you have to really figure out how you manage your trades today, dealing with the volatility. The size of this bar, like if you were just to buy at this high, you're going to be in for 4 points in 50, right? So that's double the normal risk. And if you're trading multiple contracts, you're going to have a hard time taking this stop. So your management needs to be a little more advanced if you're going to enter at the highs on this bar. It's unfortunate that we get the higher low here right into the highs of kind of what our range is, so I'm not interested in going long anymore. It's possible that we're going to get a breakout pullback. That might be a trade to consider. So right here, if we break above, you might consider going long. Breaks above there. Same idea we always use. Range breaks out. First attempt to go lower fails. We want to get long. The tricky thing about this one is like every trade today has an explanation. That's how you know it's just like not even worth it. Um, when this one closes, it closes back inside the bear bar. Those can work as traps. So you're going to be a little more cautious of that. And because it closed back inside this bear bar, the breakout pullback technically um, hasn't completed. So going long here is now early. So depending on your management, back to how you manage trades, I typically go break even plus one if I see this pattern, especially if it hasn't been really confirmed that we're going higher and we're not just going to pull back to the breakout. So this is a trade where you might end up scratching for not as much profit. But if you are going to set and forget, your stop is going to go down here at 34.9275, and we're going to wait it out. Start to go sideways, but your stop is fine. You're just waiting, get a pullback, and then you get a big bearish continuation. It's hard to chart this pattern well because really we just went sideways and then we're getting another sort of breakout. So in a way, because I know a lot of people are going to be looking for a trend, but there's not really a trend, right? You could draw this one, but I'm going to have to cut through some of this price action to get that third touch. So that's not really, this isn't helping me yet. You get some resistance off these highs, but even off the highs, it's only two touches. So neither side has been confirmed. So any trade ideas you get off it, it's not confirmed, right? The way I do it, I like to go a little tighter. So I would have used something like that off those lows, and then I get three touches, a break outside, and then a move to a new high. So in my head, I'm kind of bearish, but I maybe want to see if we're going to get up here first. But I'm probably not going to be taking any more long trades. So it just depends on how you want to read this. That's why I say a really important key is um, once you figure out how you like to read the market, whether you like the skinny channels or you like the broader channels, just try to draw your lines the same way every time. So at least you're consistent in how you draw, and then you'll have more conviction in your setups. So this is just a market where you got to just wait for something to make sense. And if that doesn't happen, you just sit on your hands or go take a walk or do whatever you got to do. But typically I go till 8:30. So we got about another hour and we'll see what happens. Starting to get that two legs higher, getting closer to our resistance. At this point, if you do broaden, you can probably see two or three touches. Still really not. It doesn't really touch, but if you want to cut into this, it, you know, it's there. I know a lot of people will like to use this one, but I'm not really going to take trades off that. We break lower. If anything, we're going to expect a retest of these highs. This is just the first entry off the low side. There's no swing low since our swing low down here, so there's no real count off the lows. So we're going to wait on a second entry if we're going to get a trade. Here's your second entry, but again, it's an inside bar going right into the EMA. We're making lower lows. Um, we were at previous resistance as well. So our expectations might be that we're going to go short. Um, so I wouldn't take that long. This one is an interesting one because I forget how this one worked. I think this one broke above, then broke lower, and then came back up. If I remember right, this bar broke above, came back, and then went. So depends on how you entered. If you entered long on the first swing, you get stopped out. But if you waited and now you're looking at this, like I said, I've never been a fan of these engulfing bars. They, for whatever reason, they don't make sense to me. But if you are going to take it, I want to put a limit order back here on the close, 34.95.25. If it backs up and gets me in, cool. I'll take my scalp. I'm not as interested buying the high. Looks like it backs up. It backs up enough for any of those limit orders to get filled, and then you get your scalp. And that's okay because look at the two legs back, expecting that the test of the highs. The setup is just after seeing. I rarely see prices break above, come below, then come back above. I probably could count on both hands how many times I've seen that. So I doubt we're going to get a sell off after that, right? Um, Still yet, here's a higher low before we get to the highs, but the signal is not that great. We had a signal like that earlier today somewhere. It feels like it was a repeat, right? Um, I don't remember exactly where we saw that. The higher low was a sort of bearish. Okay, it was somewhere back there, I guess, but regardless, that's not really the signal that um, I want to take. Okay, here it is. Here's that repeat pattern almost. That same sort of bar off a higher low. So if you're seeing that, I mean, you might, but I'll have to start taking a note of this setup. That one, that one goes off. So we'll start to look for that, these bear bars, because technically this bar is bullish, but it's just the way it sets up. It has a bear feel. And same thing over here. For it to come back all the way off the low like that means there were buyers at the end of this bar. There were buyers who pushed it all the way back up. So that is a bullish sign. But those buyers weren't able to push it all the way back to the highs in the time period. And that's why it feels like a bearish setup. So it's tricky to take that trade. But if you're seeing these repeat patterns and kind of understand what we're expecting and being aggressive, you might have been in there. Here's a really interesting, tricky trade that I took today. Here's a second entry short, um, range breakout fade, right? It's going to be hard for people to believe that I took this trade, but let me explain why. This whole time, if we look, we're looking at the resistance. We did have a breakout here, but there's only one point of contact. So I want the place where there's the most points of contact first. And if we continue higher, then that's just what it is. But back to that concept I was talking about down in over here, when multiple ideas play out and you get a setup, you should go ahead and take those trades, right? So let's talk about the multiple ideas that are happening here. We have the trend that we drew, 2 legs back, move to a new high. We expect a reversal. Same thing that we saw over here. We have the range, just kind of like a breakout of the range. Notice how we never got that breakout pullback we always look for. So now that we've moved so far from the EMA and we're getting a bearish signal, this is more likely to at least provide a scalp. And then the real reason to enter is a second entry short. Off this low, first entry, pullback, second entry. So you just enter there. And then ironically, the easiest trade of the entire day is the smallest bar. Look at the bar. This is a point and a quarter. So the risk on this bar, even if you were to have a couple contracts, is actually really great. Really great for a scalp. Not even thinking about a runner to the EMA or something. So a really good trade, and then the result was kind of unexpected and random. You get this big push down, you easily get your scalp, and if you have a runner, you're just holding your runner like I did, and out of nowhere the bottom just falls right out, and that's exactly why I don't like having a target order on my chart because I have no idea. Like I would have exited right here. I would have had a target order right here on the EMA. It's like, oh, great, I got 5 points. Awesome, but just let the market go as far as it wants to go and you bring your stop down and you just keep eating off this trade. Keep eating off this trade. I think I exited on this bar like just midway through. Because the thing about these really big moves, especially when they happen that fast, these 3 bars happened in about 45 seconds. So it was like a flash crash, and you just happened to get a setup, an easy setup right before the crash, and you make a lot of money on that. But looks like my mouse is stuck. Okay, here we go. We're good. So the thing about this thing is you when you get a crash like that, the market will probably take it back, reset, and if it is going to go lower, it'll then start going lower. It's not as common for this to just continue on. So once you start seeing any sign of buying, you need to cover as much of your profit as possible. This is not a good trade to let it hold to the EMA and then try to swing it. It's gonna try to reset and then decide what it's gonna do. So I didn't even wait for that bull bar. I saw it just keep smashing all these lows, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be good enough. But if I was gonna manage the trade a little bit better, um, I'd be covering the break of these lows, so my stop would be above this bar right here. And honestly, when I see a bar like this isn't a bad bar to exit on, but we're going to wait for like a higher low, whether we get a higher low before we get up to 34.9150. And then here you get that higher low. So this is a buying sign in any market. If you weren't in this trade feeling euphoria, you would probably be buying this. So this is a good place to move your stop to as well. And if you don't move your stop there, you get stopped out um, at a worse price. So, the thing about these big moves is you're only going to get what the market is going to give. You're not going to get a cent more than the market will give. So you always have to keep in mind that once you start seeing your signs to exit, just exit. It's done. It's over. If it was going to give you 30 points, 100 points, it'd be moving to 100 points. That's not what this trade is. And if you're too greedy, wait, let's see how long this took. 8 o'clock, 8:03, you've given back 50%. Right there, you get a reversal pattern. Look at this. I honestly, if this wasn't so sideways, I'd be buying right there. And if you're still so attached on that profit, thinking, we're just going to break out and come down, now you've given back everything. So pay attention. Once you start seeing those reversal signs, just take what it give you. So anyway, at this point, it's kind of hard to read again though, because now we're back at the highs. Um, we had a congestion zone, so let's play the breakout pullback, but none of these close above the previous bar. So the breakout pullback technically hasn't happened, but I'm sure you can find three touches. So maybe you're just going to play well, what we'll do is we'll play the reversal pattern, right? So 1, 2, 3. So that's what the trend will be. And we'll just see if we get setups. We need like a second entry off the trend or a break and like a second entry. Don't get it, but the trend is holding. You know, the context isn't the same because it isn't quite a real higher low. But here's another repeat pattern of that bear bar that at the very end gets a lot of buying, and then you get the break above and you get a scalp profit. That's the third time that's happened today. It's not a setup, but it's a pattern on the chart. So we're gonna keep an eye on this. We're getting that first break outside. Prices closed below the EMA. And that's okay. We're gonna need a reversal pattern before we switch our bias. So we're still gonna look for longs. Here's a two-legged pullback. You're being aggressive, and it's into the EMA. But if you see that, that's a good sign. Let's see if maybe we get a higher low. Of course, you get a nice profit, but unless you're being aggressive, you're not really going to enter there. On a thousand on a 1,000 tick chart, you definitely had a second entry long, but on this chart, it doesn't really print. It only prints as a two-legged pullback, so you have to be in a good spot to take that. Here, it's a lower high, but we're still going to wait on the reversal pattern. We're still trying to see if we're going to come test 3506.75. You get a break outside here and a reversal. So if we close below this bar, we can switch our bias. But you can also see how sideways we're going. Look at that doji, another doji, and all of those are inside bars. So I don't want to short below this bar necessarily. It never breaks below the bar, so no trade sets up. There was a second entry long, but just a second ago you were about to get stopped out. So I don't think you can really justify, you know, being in this trade to the long side either. And if you were, you just get stopped out anyway. So I don't see anything through there. You're gonna have to wait. Um, and it's basically 8:30. There's no reason to beat around the bush, you know. There were actually a few good trades, but there were a lot of choppy trades. But you can see that if you stick to your rules, you're gonna get in at the best spots. The irony of the day to me is that the easiest trade gave you the most money, and it was like this was such a shock, you know. But it's there's something to be said about, you know, instead of swinging for every single green or red bar, just wait for your setups. And if you're here for the first hour and a half, first 2 hours, there should be at least one. I see it at least every day. There's one trade that will give you these sort of like really outsized returns. But that's it on the analysis. This was a real, like, my mouth is so dry just talking about this stuff. This is a pain to analyze. But let's just go through the rest of the day and see how we played out. You know, typically we're going to want to be short up in here, but you just, you know, wait for your setups. Kind of get that lower high, but it's not a good enough bar. You get the reversal. Maybe you're going short there. Look at that trade. That's the one that goes. So if you're patient, you know, the trades are in there. You just got to kind of. And a real quick side note, you know, see how the prices are bouncing on both sides of my resistance? You know, you can move that up. And another thing I like to do is just create another zone, honestly. And you just need to be kind of conscious of the fact that this is a zone. So once we get the breakout pullback below this area, we might start playing the bigger overall range. But, you know, lately I've seen a lot of charts that end up trading right in the middle of these resistance zones. So we might start just pulling a line down to the lows wherever we get the most touches, you know, the most recent price action and the most touches. Just kind of put it there. And then same thing on the highs. And then from there, you can start finding your setups and they'll probably work. There was like a lower high and a failed second entry. That one looks like it doesn't quite get you enough, but you know, not everything is perfect. But like that one works. So, you know, you would have been fine on that one. So, and then you'd been fine on that one. So it just depends. It just depends. It's kind of a tricky day. And I think part of that is the election. Part of that is where the market was in 2020. We were at all-time highs at the beginning of the year, and we're still at all-time highs for some reason, even though we've gone through a pandemic and an election and all these crazy things. So I don't expect traders just being super confident with millions of dollars, right? We could go anywhere from here. So I won't be surprised if we get choppy markets, but you shouldn't be too discouraged because you can still make a lot of money. You just need to be patient. So, okay, that was a mouthful, but hopefully, you know, y'all understand what was going on so that if we do see this price action on, or if we see the price action next week, you know, we have a system for it. Cool, cool. Y'all be safe out there, man. We'll probably know who the president is by our next chart lesson, but you know, regardless, just be safe. And you know, that's why we're traders. We can make money in any environment, but it's not necessarily easy. So that's it for me. Come on, Heart is out. Y'all have a great weekend.